All right, you guys, welcome back to the channel. Here in front of me is the brand new, the all new 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe autobiography. I mean calligraphy. When the expectations are set so high, I have to find out if they actually fall into place. If it all makes sense in the end, if it's worth your money, let's go for a drive. Oh, actually, before I go, something I realized. Am I the only one who just realized that the Hyundai key fob is actually their logo? I always just thought it was an ugly key fob. I mean, it's still an ugly key fob, but yeah, that is that. First big improvement, they've moved the shifter stock from in the center console here to the steering column. Just like the Ioniq 6 I drove, awesome, great decision. It frees up so much space in the center, which we'll get to, but this has gotta be one of the most polarizing brand new SUVs to come out in the last couple of years. Starting price here, $42,000 Canadian. As tested, the Calligraphy edition that I'm driving today, $56,000 Canadian. So under the hood is a 2.5 liter turbocharged inline 4 making 277 horsepower, 311 pound-feet of torque, powering all four wheels with Hyundai's with Hyundai's HTRAC all-wheel drive. Now that is standard in Canada. That goes with a lot of new vehicles. We are not able to spec the front-wheel drive versions, so the starting price is actually a little bit lower for you guys in the States because you are able to spec even the Calligraphy edition here in front-wheel drive, which you cannot do here in Canada. It is a front bias all-wheel drive system, so when I'm in normal driving scenarios, it will send 100% of the torque to the front wheels, and then when it senses slip, it'll send it to the rear. Or if I'm in, let's say, a different drive mode, we have normal, sport, and then my drive, in which I can customize both my engine or throttle response between normal, sport, or smart. And with smart, it'll kind of detect if we're going a little bit quicker, of course, or if we're just commuting and we want the revs always to be as low as possible. That option is there for you. And then steering, normal or sport. It's not too light in normal, so I tend to keep it in normal most of the time. But sport does make it a little bit heavier. But if I were to hit this button, press it down, we can change the terrain mode, snow, mud, and sand. Now up here in Canada, as far as I can tell, we don't have the option to do the all-wheel drive lock. And there is a button on the US versions of the all-wheel drive Santa Fe, which allow you to quote unquote lock the center differential. But it doesn't really matter too much, all that much, because when I'm in snow mode, it will default to an 80-20 split, 80 front, 20 rear, and then kind of vary it depending on the scenario. And then if I were to go to mud or sand, the default is 50-50, which is in effect a locked center differential or four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive lock, I should say. It's not four-wheel drive, it's all-wheel drive. But it handles well. It's just big. It's just really big, and you feel that. It's a catch-22 because the longer wheelbase probably helped smooth out a little bit of the ride quality, but it also kind of made it a little bit more of a chore to hustle around smaller corners. Dual clutch transmission here. It's an 8-speed dual clutch. We've got paddle shifters, of course. Let's do a little 0 to 60 run here. We'll go into sport. The gauge cluster changes a little bit, and we'll just pin it. Momentary lapse in torque there. The dual clutch isn't tuned quite as precisely, as quick as the Veloster and DCT, what I felt in that car, but it's close. It's very close. We get to the elephant in the room. This thing is huge. It's pixelated. Those headlights up there, those driving lights are straight out of Space Invaders. Hyundai has kind of come into their own in the last 5 years this looks nothing like any of Hyundai's other products. You could say it looks similar to the Ioniq 5, but they do boxy in two different ways. Like, whereas the Ioniq 5 is like futuristic boxy. And you can tell because the door handles are flush with the vehicle, these are not. This is a rugged box. Of course, it pulls a ton of inspiration from Land Rover, including the black bits on the side of the vehicle. And if you're wondering what that little plastic bit is, it's a lockable handle to make it easier for you to get access to the roof rack. Stand on the tire, and you have somewhere to put your hands. Now, to me, it's not as practical as that. I feel like it's a little bit more of a design decision. Those pieces are pulled straight from a Land Rover Defender in design, and there's no way you could convince me otherwise. And to me, I mean, they have a lock on them. That's a storage compartment. To me, you put something in there that you do not want others to find, and that's exactly what Santa Fe buyers should do with that. Do I like the way it looks? Now, from every single angle, other than the rear end, I think it looks phenomenal. They've done a great job with the black plastic, of course, around the fenders. It's got, I mean, there's tons of angles, sharp angles, and of course it gives the illusion, because they're not body color, that the vehicle is sitting taller than it is. And in fact, the XRT version, the off-road version, actually does sit about an inch, a little bit over an inch taller in ride height than this. But I think it looks great. It's huge. I love that the pillars aren't body color. It creates a very streamlined kind of luxury look. And then we get to the rear end. It looks a little bit awkward. Everything above the rear taillights looks a bit awkward. It speaks to me like, oh, this is all just form. It's made to get a lot of attention, which this week when I'm driving, it has. Everybody's looking at this car. A couple people stopped and they actually knew what it was, and they asked me if I liked it. I thought it was just all form. The rear end, the hatch, is what I'm getting to, was done for a function. They wanted to make as wide of an opening as possible, so they had to put the taillights lower than the hatch struts so that they could fit, and thus a little bit of a cartoonish kind of awkward look back there. It actually gradually gets a little bit wider from the outside when you go up. Now, I showed the Santa Fe to my parents, and my dad was like, hey, can I fit 4 foot wide plywood in the back? Because they can't in their Outback. And he measured, and you can. Just at the base of the opening back there, it's just over 4 feet. So if you guys were wondering. "21-inch wheels here, 235 tires all around," which I do have to mention is 10 millimeters thinner than you actually get on some of the other models. And that's probably because we have these 21-inch wheels here, exclusive to the Calligraphy. More spokes. Like I said in the Nissan Rogue video, does that equal a more executive feel? You guys tell me. Not quite everything has that executive look and feel though. If we go around to the hood, the right side is completely flush. The panel gap is perfect. And then on the left, it's not so great. And that's immediately noticeable if you spend more than 5 seconds looking at the front end. As well, on the rear bumper, there's a section near the bottom which has a texture that makes it look like you'd be able to step on the rear bumper on that part. But I promise you, you'll look like a bit of a fool when it cracks and falls right off. So the wheelbase is 2 inches longer here, and the entire length of the vehicle is 2.2 inches longer. Does that carry over to the interior? Let's find out. Yeah, so on the interior, the answer is yes. A lot of this Range Rover DNA inspiration is very apparent here. I mean, people pointed it out, and it begins on the steering wheel with this horizontal line here. From a distance, it looks exactly like the older Range Rover steering wheels. Their logo, horizontal line across the steering wheel, and then down here on the HVAC, these 2 temperature control knobs on either side with the kind of gloss finish here and the haptic or touch buttons in the center. That is Range Rover. Now, of course, it's not the exact same. It doesn't have the same effect. Range Rovers are what, double, triple the price, right? But the idea is when the vehicle's off, it looks a lot cleaner. And they've achieved that. It looks pretty good. Now, the Calligraphy gets a couple of things that the other models don't get. One of those being the heads-up display. Looks great. Huge display. You can turn it off if you don't want it. Dual wireless charging. I don't know if this was the move, but in all honesty, the way they've laid out the storage in this vehicle is just great. The attention they put into designing a cabin that looks and feels clean and simple enough, but at the same time has all the storage and more that you could possibly want is quite something. So they have kind of nailed it here. A huge area down below here for storage, 2 cup holders here, and then of course here your center console, which opens from either end and has an incredible amount of space. There's actually, if you lift out this middle tray, there's an entire section if you put your hand further in underneath these cup holders, like a hidden compartment there. Probably the biggest center console. There is one little thing I don't like though. See how this lifts up and down? There's a little bit of resistance. When I get to the bottom, when it's about to close, it kind of slams shut and there's no way to really softly close it. There kind of is, but it's you really have to think about it. It's not as soft as you would like it. And then of course here we have split glove boxes here, one at the top, a little shelf, and then one at the bottom. Steering wheel is of course leather. In the Calligraphy, we also get Napa leather seats. I love these seats. They've got all of the controls you could want from a seat are here. And you get, of course, the extended cushion here. Watch this, you guys. My favorite part, probably of the entire vehicle. Oh yeah, there we go. Feet up. It's it's a lazy boy in your own vehicle when you need to take a rest. Or if you just want to look out the moonroof here, which you get 2 of them. Back to reality. You also get this Alcantara headliner. It's touch and go, right? Because it looks good. When I look out, if I'm scanning traffic or whatever, and I see the A-pillar, it looks great. It does provide kind of an extra luxury feel, but then you look at it and every person that's been in this vehicle had to have some excuse to touch it, so it does get a little bit messy. You almost need like a I don't know, a brush or something to periodically make your Alcantara uniform, which that could get kind of annoying. You also get the captain's chairs in the second row. Those are heated. You get the sunshades, and of course all Napa leather. Great headroom back there. In fact, a little bit more than both the Acura MDX and the CX-90. The Acura MDX is a little bit less comparable to this because the Honda Pilot exists, and that is a little bit larger in space. But great room overall. A few of the seat controls are manual, a few of them are electronic, but the third row, if you're wondering, does recline, which is great. And the rest of the buttons in here, everything feels solid. The door shut. It's a heavy door. It feels good. There are a couple of buttons here, like the temperature controls, that move around a little bit, and that lack of refinement, there's a little bit, that last 10% of refinement just isn't there on a couple of the touch points, but all the materials are great, and it feels solid. I love the infotainment. I was worried it was going to be too much. It's not. It works well. Android Auto's integrated, amazing. One thing I do love, you know when you hit your turn signal and you just kind of tap it, you can adjust how many turn signal beeps you get. I've set it to 5, so it's not the normal 3, which sometimes I don't find is enough. The engine's good. It's got plenty of torque. Torque rolls on smoothly. Now, comparing it to one of its closest competitors, the CX-90, the drivetrain here is not quite as refined and doesn't sound as good as the inline 6. And it's the opposite. It's a rear-wheel drive bias all-wheel drive system. So out of corners and stuff, you get a little bit more confidence and rotation there with the Mazda. And it sounds a little bit better. The transmission isn't as quick to respond there, but it's quick enough, right? And of course, you have 2 more cylinders, so it does have just a smoother operation. This has more of a buzz when you really put your foot down. I mean, I'm incredibly impressed in how smooth it rides. Very comfortable here. Almost the best part about kind of the daily driving experience is the lack of road noise. It is incredibly quiet in here. Not only does it ride smooth, it soaks up bumps really well. It's not too stiff. It does not have adaptive dampers, of course, keeps the cost down, but just the road noise, I don't know what magic they kind of pulled here, but it is very quiet. It definitely lives up to what they're trying to reach for when it comes to the competition. All right, that's the 2024 Santa Fe. Let me know what you guys think. Just gut reaction looking at this. I'm thoroughly impressed with what Hyundai's been able to do here for the money. It is quite incredible. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit me up on Instagram at Roads Untraveled. I'll be driving the 2024 Civic Type R, finally, next week. So you can look out for that. Thanks for watching.